Wheel is spinning. Play. Oh, now we're live. It's Fun Time Spectacular with a Vengeance. I'm your host, Matt Meyer. With me, as always, Nicholas Osborne. And welcome back to Mighty Mike Eakins. Back from a well-deserved break. Mike, how are you?
I'm good. It's rainy over here, but there's no snow, so we're good.
Okay. Well, we're glad to have you back, man. We truly missed you.
Appreciate it.
And joining us this week for this epic hang sesh is Professor White.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So we had a guest lined up for this week, and unfortunately, said guest had to postpone and reschedule because of the terrible snowpocalypse barreling its way through the much of the continental U.S. right now. If you are down in Texas or Oklahoma, like Nick or I, or any other state that's in the path of this storm, reach out. Share what you're reading. Share what you're doing for warmth. We want to hear from you. But yeah, we are kind of just having fun and winging it this week. It's been a while since we did a non-interview format show, so we kind of forgot how to do it. But there's been so much awesome news out there in the world, that a world of comics, I should say, terrible news in the rest of the world, that I thought that it'd be nice to just kind of catch up on recent events. And Nick, go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, we haven't done this in so long. I am doing news and not scoop. What are we doing here? There really has been a lot, but I want to go back to our last episode where we had the interview with Jamal Eigold, and he kind of gave some hints that when our discussion turned to Milestone, that all wasn't exactly lost with that initiative. And it turns out that night, we got some embargo news that Milestone is returning at DC Comics, and they're coming out. They're going to be part of the Infinite Edition #0 that's coming out, and then there's going to be a new Static Shock miniseries, Icon and Rocket, Hardware, just the whole initiative coming back. And Jim Lee put out a statement saying that Reggie Hudlin and Dennis Cohen were involved, and there's a lot of other people, exciting names attached. So that's pretty big news, and would have been awesome to talk about it with Jamal Eigold for that episode that came right afterwards, but still cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, how many of y'all were reading Milestone back in the day, right? Like, when it first hit, those Dakota kids knocked everyone's socks off. Like, this was such a fresh, smart initiative. And then you add on the fact that it's Black creators, it's Black owned, it's Black properties. Like, it was remarkable. I was about 14 or 15, I think, when they started hitting the stands, and I was buying them all up. Loving Rockets, Hardware, Static, of course. Like, Static Shock became the breakout success from it. But I mean, all those Dakota kids were awesome. Like, great characters, great writers. So I mean, seeing Dennis involved is wonderful. He was there, boots on the ground from day one. It's sad that we can't have Dwayne here to see it, but I'm so happy to have him coming back. I see that Sienkiewicz is one of the pencilers on it, so I guess we won't have all Black creators involved, but at least it's very strong creators if we can't have all Black creators, I guess.
Well, absolutely.
So I mean, at least they're going to treat the properties with respect. I would have been happier if we had all Black creators on the books, but nitpicky, I guess.
Yeah, and I think sort of what we talked about with Jamal during the episode is we asked him if it was kind of the right time for it, and I think he mentioned something along the lines of there was never not a time where Milestone kind of should be happening, that even after it somewhat went away, it really needed to be around. And I think the same is true today. It's something that needs to happen, and I think it's a good thing that DC's bringing that back. But we have a lot to cover, and we're going to be bouncing around a lot, so excuse me, because just kind of a lot happening, and it feels like it hit really sporadically. Like, Thursdays are usually busy for comic book news, But this Thursday was crazy, and there's a lot of cool stuff to get to, but some stuff happened during the week. Marvel put out a pretty cool teaser for Boba Fett that was pretty cool artwork, not gonna lie. They teased that something was coming, and then the next day they follow up with War of the Bounty Hunters. There's going to be a Boba Fett series kicking off, and it's going to tie in with a lot of the different Star Wars series at Marvel, like Dr. Aphra. I think the prelude is going to kick off with Dr. Aphra, and just part of, Marvel doing their thing with Star Wars. So that should be pretty cool. On the reverse side, DC Comics, they announced a couple of days ago a couple of new digital first series, which is something that we're seeing a lot more of from Disney, actually. Seeing comics that are going to happen in print, but maybe a few months after they come out on the digital platforms, which is a reverse from what the platforms have been used for in the past. They thought it was pretty tricky with comic book stores to be releasing books first on the digital platform, so we've pretty much had to wait 6 months sometimes, like with Marvel Unlimited, to get the digital copies. But DC's kind of changing the game right now, and they've been doing it a lot with the DCeased events and stuff like that with digital first. And now they're bringing the worlds of Superman 78 and Batman 89 to comics. So they're going to be doing like 6 digital chapters for each of them, dropping in July, and then every week after that there'll be a new issue. And then a couple months later, they're going to do print versions. And then a couple months after that, they're going to do hardcover collected editions. So, how many fans got into comics from these 2 movies in particular? So I know there's a ton of people excited for it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of the older fan groups and sites that I frequent are really psyched to see this. And I mean, it's such low-hanging fruit. It kind of boggles the mind that it hasn't happened before now.
That's true. It really is. I think, there are some rumors about like Michael Keaton and the Batman joining in, and DC maybe doing this connected universe in their movies. And interesting that they're doing this now, with considering everything that's going on with Future State and what happened to bring that into existence that we talked a lot about with Snyder's work. We're kind of seeing that in action, I feel like, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And continuing on, we've got new Marvel Heroes Reborn covers coming from Jeffrey Viraj. Sorry if I butchered the last name. Some really cool stuff in that. A lot of Heroes Reborn news happening, and interesting to see that.
I just want to say, because we haven't done a news segment since this Heroes Reborn thing came about.
Yeah.
What a stupid marketing decision. Because there's so many people that hate Heroes Reborn. It's one of the most widely reviled things in Marvel's history. I mean, I realize it does have its fans. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not trying to disparage anyone who does enjoy it or the books themselves, but there's a lot of I just don't understand the appeal of bringing it back. Call it, you want to do where the Avengers never existed? Okay, whatever, fine. Call it something else.
Yeah, I mean, Cody, Marvel isn't really known for being able to read the room very well, and this was just kind of another failure of them to read the room in the comics industry. And looks like they're going full steam ahead with it, though.
Yeah, I'll be late for that.
It almost feels like they're deliberately trolling.
Yeah.
A little bit. Because they released the name of the event well before, a week or so before they actually revealed what it was. So there's deliberate design there in them trying to get people riled up and at least intrigued and or angry. I don't get it. I really don't. But maybe, I mean, there's some solid creative teams attached to some of these books that are coming out. So, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some good stuff to read in there, but major marketing blunder, in my opinion.
It's true. And I think that's just something that It's kind of common with Marvel, so it's not exactly surprising, but it is something that, where a lot of fans were so excited to see Superman 78 and Batman 89 in those same groups. You kind of saw the reverse on that reaction with anything in Heroes Reborn. It was just, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't know. It's weird.
It is, but moving on, something a little better on DC side, they announced the Festival of Heroes, the Asian Superhero Collection, and it is going to be kind of celebrating the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and it's going to feature a ton of different cool characters from a ton of different artists and creatives like Ram V, Mariko Tamaki, that is kind of exploring that side of DC Comics, and I believe it's going to come out May 11th, so that is definitely something that's not too late to put it on your pull list and get that one set aside. Let's see, there's so much happening. It's really hard to sort through it all. There's been just so much news. Here lately, Marvel's been talking a lot about Fantastic Four number 32, the Bride of Doom arc, and I think that I've seen a lot more positive reaction on that and kind of what's happening on the Fantastic Four side of comics. I don't know if y'all are keeping up with them or not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's been really good. Dan Slott, in his own Dan Slott way, has really gone, I don't want to say overboard, but he's really gone out of his way to make the book feel like a classic Fantastic Four book should, with a heavy emphasis on family and exploration and adventure, and less on day-to-day superheroics and that sort of thing. This obviously is the FF 60th anniversary this year, so Marvel is justifiably doing some big stuff. I want to say this August will be the of FF number 1, and one of the cool things they're doing, like we don't know print wise floppies what they're going to be doing yet, but they are putting out a really cool omnibus, just like called August 1961, and it collects every Marvel book that they published the month FF number 1 came out. Like a lot of this stuff is incredibly rare and has never ever been collected anywhere before. So I mean, just a cool artifact.
Yeah, it's a really cool idea. Really, you don't see that a lot.
I would expect next year they do something similar for Spider-Man.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but it's good to see the FF getting some love. Yeah,
definitely. And then the character that probably gets too much love, there's more Batman news from DC Comics in another digital first series. And like we talked about, it looks like this is the initiative that DC is taking with a lot of their new announcements. It looks like they're bringing the Legends of the Dark Knight back with new chapters that, the series that started back in '89. They're bringing that one back with digital first kind of one-shots and minis from different creators that will eventually be printed and then eventually collected and kind of follow through that cycle that we talked about. Another kind of glimpse into maybe what the future of DC Comics looks like, and tapping into some of the most popular stories and creative moments for these characters and bring them in different ways that you might not expect. And I think that's, something that a lot of fans are excited because it's got a surprisingly good reaction online with the Legends of the Dark Knight, because there are a lot of fans on that one. And I think it'll be interesting. I think people are excited to see what DC does with it. And I'm not so sure if the digital first thing is going to land as well as they'd hope. And fingers crossed it does, because I'm excited for it. I use Comixology a lot. I know that they'll be available there before, a couple months before I can go pick them up. But this feels like they're taking it in an interesting direction and not just like throwing stuff at the wall. Like these properties that they're tapping into have worked and they have a fan base.
Well, you look at DC's solicits for a coming out of Future State, and there's a couple things that jump out at me. One, it's the core stable of characters, right? Like there's no weird oddball surprise character books out there or anything. There's no Solomon Grundy book or something like that. But there's also a ton of miniseries and one-shots. And Cody, you had mentioned back in December, we were talking about that month maybe being a bellwether for things to come. And I think you hit the nail on the head. So...
yeah, almost forget it around for a hot minute. Like this trend of one-shots and minis overtaking the grand, like, long-running titles, in actuality makes so much sense given what we have coming out of Death Metal and Future State and the Frontier too. Like, of course we would want shorter stories scattered about, various properties. Like, it makes a lot of sense to me. But also, it's, speculator hell. People are going to buy everything because they're number ones. There's going to be always that pull, that same Marvel model, right? The infinite number ones. They cracked the code, and that's why.
Well, and I'll say that the furthered reliance on easily collected miniseries furthers the writing for the trade trend that Marvel really kicked off with a vengeance, 15-ish, 10, 15 years. Right. It's kind of the next in the evolution of that as well. But I mean, look at some of the stuff that's coming out, like Tom Taylor and Andy Kubert on Batman the Detective, right? I mean, 6 issue, gonna sell like hotcakes both ways, right? Singles and collected. That's just stuff like that is just a no-brainer. You got 10 issues of Swamp Thing by Ram V. I mean, just things of this nature that I really think points to a wise strategy at play over at DC. And I mean, we didn't know if this was going to land or not.
Right.
6 months ago.
Oh, definitely a smart business model. To circle back though a little bit, Legends of the Dark Knight for some of our younger viewers out there. This was a title when I was coming up, and I mean really like right when I was coming up was when it was launching. Like I started reading about 87. This launches in 89. And it was, at the time, it was short, 1, 2, 3 issue arcs maybe, change creative team, tell a story. It didn't matter about continuity, when, where, what.
Yeah.
None of that mattered. But what it was doing was it was exposing us to artists and writers that we'd never heard of. It wasn't the big names of the time for the most part. It was the next wave of big names. Yep. So I mean that just from that pure that standpoint alone, I'm super interested to see what they do with it, because it's obviously been a major initiative at DC is to get more voices out there. That's how we have, Mike Conrad and Becky Cloonan coming up on like major books. Philip Kennedy. Phillips. Yeah. So I mean, this initiative to get more voices out there, I think, is a very good thing for everybody. And a rising tide raises all ships, right? So if DC can do this and get these voices out there, everyone else will follow suit. And by everyone else, I just mean Marvel, really.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, just from a historical perspective, Cody, do you remember who, what hotshot new writer wrote the second arc in the original Legends of the Dark Knight?
First arc was...
second arc. First arc was Denny.
Wait, now I'm having to unshadow of the bat too.
Matt putting him on the hot seat is
right. He's nervous.
I'm glad I wasn't asked this one.
Grant Morrison.
Yeah,
it was his first monthly Batman Arkham Asylum.
Is it called Shaman or?
No, that's the Denny O'Neil one.
I can almost picture the cover, but yeah.
The Morrison arc was, I believe, called Gothic.
Gothic, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, just give listeners out there with that are maybe a little younger and less fogey-ish Just some perspective is some of the names that came up through the years
Sure.
through Legends of the Dark Knight.
Yeah, absolutely. It was huge.
Talking to you, Nick.
Well, I'm going to use that as a transition. I've got more Batman news, but I'm going to take a second because Grant Morrison has an indie book coming out at Boom Studios that I think is a good time to plug. It's called Proctor Valley Road. It's from Grant Morrison, Alex Child, Naomi Franquez, and Tamara Bonvillain. And it's about the mysterious monsters that haunt Proctor Valley Road and 4 misfit teenagers who must stop them. The artwork is insane, and I'm super excited for it. There's a cover from Peach Momoko that immediately I will pick up. And I'm excited to see what Grant Morrison does. Boom has been doing some really exciting work, especially in their indie stuff. And this was a pairing that I didn't expect to see happen with Boom and Grant Morrison. Could be really cool. I'm excited for that one. Definitely worth checking out.
It's Grant Morrison. I'm in. I'll check it out regardless. Now, I may not ultimately wind up digging it. I mean, but I'll always check out the new Grant Morrison thing.
Yeah. And Grant Morrison horror title at Boom. It's on my pull list. Like,
when is this thing ship, Nick?
It's coming out in March, actually. So
really?
This is so the news has been. We've done a couple of articles with it. We've got first look at the artwork and some of the covers, and it looks really cool. And I just have not seen many people talking about it. There's a spook tour with classmates on the most haunted, demon-infested stretch of road in America. To fund attending the concert of their dreams, and everything turns deadly. They've got to escape, and it actually looks pretty spooky. So it could be cool. I've got high hopes for it.
Is it intended as a mini-series or an ongoing?
I believe that it's just a mini series.
Okay.
Fun thing with Boom, though,
100%. Yeah, like
so with Once in Future.
Yeah, a lot of these start out as minis or short ones, and then if they turn into hits, it's like Once in Future, where let's just run with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And most interestingly, maybe not for comic fans, but it's already set to be adapted to TV from NBC Universal. So there are already works for it to be adapted, and there's a huge discussion around that that comic fans tend to like tiptoe around on whether books are made for adaptation or not, and whether it's actually made to suit the comic medium. Or Image got a lot of flack for a lot of their series being, TV pitches, and I feel like they've moved away for a lot from that recently, but you're seeing it pop up in some of the other publishers. And from what I've seen of the artwork, that doesn't look like this is the case for Proctor Valley Road. I think it's going to be something really cool, but it's always out there.
Yeah, I mean, Boom's done it too. I've read the first 6 issues of 7 Secrets, and it absolutely reads like a treatment for like a TV show or an animation or something. It's not bad in that regard, but it very much seems to have that in mind.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm gonna try to keep this moving because I haven't even gotten to today's news, and we're already at this almost 25 minutes. I want to get your reaction on the new villain at Batman from Tinian and Jimenez. They've done Designer, Punchline, Clown Hunter, Ghostmaker, and now I don't know if you saw the announcement, but they're doing Miracle Molly in Batman 108. And that one's coming out in May, and kind of like a cyberpunk design, so I was super into it. Their track record of villains.
There.
Yeah, right.
That's about all you gotta say.
Like the track record of villains has been so solid for them. I feel like it's pretty cool that it's been so strong that DC's using it in the marketing. I mean, like, you've loved all these characters, and here's just another one added to it.
Mm-hmm. Let's be clear here. The Designer was an absolute fail. That was a total flop. But the design of it was fine. The idea behind it was fine. JT4 is getting a lot of credit, rightfully so, on his Batman run, but Jorge Jimenez is not getting nearly the amount of clout he needs to be getting for the work he's doing in this series. He went from who? That's not Phil Jimenez to oh shit, bona fide superstar working on all your favorite books. Overnight, it felt like it was just like boom, everywhere I look, it's Jorge Jimenez. So I mean, just something to put out there. This guy is just crushing it right now. He's
And here is the design, just so I could let everybody check it out.
Yeah, that is definitely a design, all right.
Right.
That is something. And I have to, the design is so garishly extreme that, I mean, it obviously says something about the character, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
And there's another
behind
cool
the character. I mean, yeah, let's see that one a little bit better. Like, okay, that's different.
Right.
I love it.
I do too. I really love it. And so, I thought that was pretty cool. But we'll have to see whether or not it's going to be like the designer and flop or not.
Nick, you're killing me. When are you going to let Scoop talk about today's big news with Mr. Sean Lewis? Like, come on.
You got to save the best for last. And I'm doing it. I'm saving.
That's what I was hoping he was doing. I was like, don't start it now.
I haven't even gotten to today's news.
At him and he's just silent. And I want Scoop.
And I've got a couple more I've got to get to. Because Matt, I know you're into Savage Dragon. They're redoing Savage Dragon 259 and re-releasing it in May as North Force #0. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
No. It's Eric Larson, and it'll be cool.
Simple.
I think it's so. Sometimes it can feel weird and gimmicky when you move your main character someplace else, right? It's like, now Daredevil is in San Francisco, but it doesn't really impact the character. Maybe not. But moving Malcolm Dragon and his family to Toronto was a direct response to Trump's inauguration and his hostility towards his xenophobia towards minorities, right? Like, that was Eric Larson making a direct statement. And ever since he moved Dragon north of the border, it's like the book has really felt rejuvenated in a lot of ways. And I mean, North Force, okay, whatever. Let's see what it's about. Larson hasn't let me down yet. So, yeah, I'm totally there for it. I imagine it's going to be fun. I want to see more Captain Tootsie. If you don't know who Captain Tootsie is, you should definitely check out recent issues of Savage Dragon because he's ridiculously goofy and awesome. And his name is Captain Tootsie. So there you go. But what was this other news, Nick?
There is some other news, but first I want to plug. I got one more: the Invincible Red Sonja from Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti. So close, so much. I'm telling you, there was so much news, and this one's worth plugging because the news that we're getting ready to talk about has overshadowed this one, and it is worth mentioning that a new Red Sonja series is happening from Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti with art by Moratat. And it's supposed to be a return to form for the character, which, I mean, if you've been following the Russell run, that was not what that run was. So I'm pretty excited for this one to kind of tap back into what made the character so popular. And I mean, with this team on board, it's going to be good. They did so much for Harley and Power Girl, and got some love for Jonah Hex from Palmiotti. I know he's going to bring kind of a darker angle to it. So I know he can get the kills right from Red Sonja. It's going to be good. But moving on, because it was my most exciting news of the day by far as well. I know Scoop's hyped for it. We are getting a Spawn universe. What? It is happening from Todd McFarlane at Image Comics. I mean, he's going all out for this one. I'm not going to lie to you. The Spawn universe has been happening. It's been in the works pretty much since Spawn 299, 300, that we've been building towards a connected universe, a bigger universe for Spawn. And Spawn's been sliding into more of a superhero role rather than an anti-hero role that he's kind of enjoyed for so long. And Todd McFarlane is really going all in with this. And I can't say I'm surprised because that is Todd McFarlane. Anybody who follows him on social media, this is what he does. There's no doubts that he loves the comics industry and that he's here to kind of push Spawn to be as big as, Marvel and DC's characters. And I think it's great. I think it's an awesome idea. And even he knows that it's not an easy one to happen. He said DC Comics started a shared universe in the late 30s. Marvel began theirs in the early 60s. So can lightning strike a third time beginning in 2021? I personally don't have the answer to that question right now, but the only way to get an answer to that question is to make an attempt in the first place. And if that's not the most McFarlane statement,
The man
I
doesn't
love
do
that.
anything by half measure.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's really, really cool. It's going to kick off the 2021 is the year of Spawn with Spawn Universe #1. And then there's going to be King Spawn #1, the Gunslinger Spawn, and there's one more that's going to happen, the Scorched, and it's going to be kind of a team up one with Spawn, Redeemer, Gunslinger, Medieval Spawn, and She Spawn. So, I mean, here we are. It's another connected universe. That's not a foreign concept to comics, but it's undoubtedly a huge undertaking for McFarlane at Image. And there's a ton of different creators involved, like Scoop's boy Sean Lewis, a ton of other people. Scoop, what are your thoughts on this news?
I think this would be good. Let's bring in a bunch of other people, like you said, Sean Lewis. I think Donnie Cates is in on it. Brett Booth, some other people. Just metric butt ton of people. But yeah, I was pretty stoked for Sean Lewis. I'm a fan of his, even his older stuff, especially his newer stuff like Bliss. And then the guy has me reading a Superman comic. So like, goes without saying. But no, I think this is gonna be good. And like you said, those that have been keeping up with the series here, this has been a buildup. It's almost like it was a gimme. We kind of saw this, and we just didn't know how we were going to get to this point. But yeah, I'm here for the whole universe, all the creative teams. I'm definitely buying into the hype as well. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, just the names are ridiculous. Jason Sean Alexander is back, and I cannot stop freaking out about that. Guy's work was freaking iconic on the Spawn run that he did leading up to 300. And I was so bummed that we're getting to this threshold and then Jason Sean Alexander's leaving, and it wasn't for long. But I mean, also there's J. Scott Campbell, Greg Capullo, like Scoop said, Donnie Cates, Jim Chung, Mike Del Mundo, David Finch, Jonathan Glapian. So many people, Sean Lewis, Sean Gordon Murphy, Ben Oliver, Mark Silvestri, Marcio Takara, Frank Quietly. I mean, Todd McFarlane has put together a list of people here, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does. It's pretty big news. I feel like Image is, of course it's down to let creators do what they want, but the marketing for this is, Image Comics president Todd McFarlane announces. And I feel like this is, what you get out of the longevity that Spawn has shown. And also the recent sales leading up to 300 sales put it up in the top 10 monthly. And it has stayed there, pretty consistently. And it's getting some of the most sales it's had in a long time. And there's no doubt Todd McFarlane's capitalizing on this, because still rumors of that movie happening with, starring Jamie Foxx and Jeremy Renner, I think, is supposed to be in it. I believe he's still fighting to direct it from Blumhouse, and he is not letting go of that. Even the marketing for the Spawn Universe news leaves the fact that there is a movie in development at the end of the press releases. So he's not letting that go, and neither am I, because it needs to happen.
Doesn't need to happen. Must it happen.
Needs to happen.
We've had a Spawn movie before, I'll remind you. And it was the special effects extravaganza of 1997.
Did you say Frank Quietly?
He
You're going to
did.
make me a damn Spawn comic? Because if Frank Quietly's drawing it, I'm going to read it.
Yes, I like, that's what I'm so excited for. It, like, all these people who are like, maybe I wasn't gonna read Spawn, now they're going to read Spawn because it has always been so closely associated with McFarlane, who you pretty quickly whether or not you're gonna love it. And their artwork changes, but that it's the story that a lot of people have talked about, where McFarlane's pretty dramatic in his writing, and some of the dialogue lands as dramatic and not always as smoothly as you would like. But I think it's a great idea to open up this character as an intellectual property in the comics medium and see what other creatives can do with it, because Spawn hasn't had that many opportunities. There's been a lot of other writers come in, a couple of horror writers who did some cool things with it, but there really hasn't been this chance to explore the character as a broad universe like this. And I think it's going to work really well. I hope it does, because I'm such a fan, and I don't know, I'm so biased for this that it's going to be amazing.
Well, let me just ask you this, because I'm going to come at it from a different angle as someone that's not like super into Spawn, okay? And from the outside looking in, is there enough of an audience for Spawn still to support this?
I would have to say yes, based on the sales. And that's the only real hard fact that I can lean on outside of my own fandom and experience with the fandom.
Because honestly, for a very long time, like, nobody's talking about Spawn, and it seems like it's just being published, to fill McFarlane's ego. And nobody was talking about it. The LCS could order like 2 copies of it to fill the subs, and that'd be it. Yeah, and if something changed in that and people are talking about Spawn again, cool, good for everyone involved. That's awesome. Longevity means something, and it does matter. Says the same guy that's been reading Savage Dragon since the 90s. So I get it. I'm not trying to guess something dumb. I just kind of coming at it from a outside perspective, trying to get a little better understanding as to how Spawn was all of a sudden this hot property again.
Right, because you
numbers junkie. Because we used to have the joke at my LCS too with the late great Ted Mays that, surprise, these pages are actually blank. We just gave him a cover and a back cover and slipped it in plastic and said, "Here you go." Put it in, nobody's reading it, whatever. Like, we used to joke about that all the time. But the numbers historically have continued to bear out, even when they weren't at the peak that they are right now. This has consistently been a top 100 book from a publisher that, quite honestly, doesn't have that many top 100 books. Mm-hmm. So, the readership has always been there, whether it's, or at least the buyership has always been there. Yeah. And now it seems like in the last, I want to say, year, the readership has really stepped up. It's still not something that I'm into, but I can respect the fact that it has earned its way into what it's doing right now. Like, it is, the numbers are now.
And they gave us a little bit of insight into those numbers. I want to take just a second to read this. It says McFarlane's capitalizing on the 28-year success story of Spawn, which has seen sales increase between 150 to 600% from pre-pandemic orders. The Spawn titles top 5 monthly selling on the Diamond Distributors top 100 chart consistently. And recently, the new Spawn figure on Kickstarter went live and raised just under $3.5 million in 30 days.
So Nick, as a reader of the book, and simply speaking as a fan, what is Spawn suddenly doing that seems to be clicking with so many people?
I think it's exactly what happened. Is we've kind of seen it coming, and we saw it in a little bit in Spawn 300. Spawn is becoming a superhero. And there's bigger forces at play because the war between heaven and hell came to a point where Spawn essentially cut access off to heaven and hell. So everybody's trapped in this earthly realm, and they're trapped in a place that Spawn has been all of these years, and it's kind of his playground now. So there's this point where heaven and hell, in that conflict, he's not really caught in the middle of. It's sort of a Watchmen moment that they're trapped with him, and there's all these things going on, but he can't be everywhere at once. So he's found himself in a bit more of a superhero role, protecting Earth in general. And he started to have a bit more of a teammate thing happening. So you've got She-Spawn coming in. And what happened in issue 300, I don't want to spoil too much of it, but the suit is basically a symbiote gets split up into a bunch of different splinters. And those splinters are giving other people powers. And it's bringing back other interpretations of the Hell Spawn that we've known before, like Gunslinger Spawn and Medieval Spawn. So all the fan favorites can come back too. And this is like set up a premise for a Spawn universe to happen where Spawn's kind of a hero in this, and there's a lot of, evil forces at bay and all of that, but there are other heroes arising. And I think like tapping into that nostalgia and also just the badass designs of something like Ninja Spawn, God, it's so cool. I think that's kind of that popularity, and it's kind of the Todd McFarlane quote of "Kids love chains." It's the coolness factor that it's not repetitive now, because Spawn has always kind of fell into that repetitive cycle of Spawn versus heaven versus hell, and I feel like McFarlane has found an angle on the character to give it new life and do something cool with it, and the readers are responding to it.
Okay, well, power to him.
Definitely. And I have been talking a lot this episode. That was a lot of news to cover. Oh my, I think that's everything though. I mean, I could keep plugging stuff. We've got a new Witcher series. Boom announced a new book with Eve called Eve. There's so much happening. And it's kind of a crazy time for comics right now. And yeah, in such a good way. We just had Young Hellboy #1 come out from Mignola at Dark Horse. We had Savage #1 at Valiant, which is their first new #1 in a long time because their schedule got messed up with the pandemic. So, I mean, so much going on, just so much.
If y'all hadn't heard yet, WonderCon this year is officially announced as at home.
Okay.
But presumably it's because they're pooling their resources and trying to solidify things to make sure that San Diego happens this year. So just another bit of news, like they kind of got buried under a whole bunch of other news, but that was something I read earlier this week, a couple of days ago.
Well, all right. It's a hint of normalcy. So is that all of the news that's fit to print?
I think so. I think that's enough of it. That's for sure.
Like, there's been a lot. It's been a minute since we've done news. So
if you can't find something you're excited for out of that list of news, like, I don't know what to do for you.
Right. Plus, there's like 3 new X-Men books fixing to kick off. So what?
Oh, X-Corp is not a mini. It's an ongoing, apparently.
I didn't know it was ever not an ongoing.
Yeah, typical.
Well, I mean, let me just say that speaks for me, speed reading, than anyone else in this instance, anyway. Is what it is. So, fellers, what have we been reading during our snowpocalypse? And Mike, you get to be in the hot seat first because, yeah, for real. Well, yes. You've been off the show for a month and you haven't shut up this episode. So, yeah, buddy, talk to us. What have you been
all wound up? No, probably. Let's see. We got The Last Ronin. Just came out the other day. Last Ronin 2. That was pretty big, pretty huge. What's that?
I said 3 months later. Kind of annoying.
Yeah, 3 months later. Yeah, we'll get 3 in October, but it's fine. But no, The Last Ronin's been out. Bliss is continuing, which is really cool because it was originally stopped and they were just going to finish it in the trade format. But they got I guess the green light from Image, and they were going to start it back up again, and so they're going to finish the series. So that was really cool. Superman and Metropolis, pretty stoked on that. Just stoked really on all the Future State books. I've been catching up with those. There is really not a bad book in that bunch. Yeah,
everyone that I've read from Future State.
Yeah, I mean there's not a bad panel in any of those books.
I've probably read 2/3 of them, and there was only one that I didn't like. So I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean just everything from the way they pair the teams. I mean, just art, colors, inks. I mean, writing, everything is just in sync. But yeah, the Future State, Bliss, The Last Ronin, King in Black has been really good. And I'm kind of eating a little bit of crow because I'm not a Null fan. And I remember the last show we did, right before King in Black came out. We were talking about that, and I was kind of like, okay, whatever. It's gonna be a big series about but it's kind of cool. So I'm excited for that. And then the Venom 200 in a couple issues. I think one more issue, I think, and that's going to end Cates and Stegman's run. And I don't want to be the team that follows those guys.
What if, though, Mike? What if?
Yeah.
It's not the end of their run, and it's a new Venom #1 featuring Dylan Brock as Venom after that. Now, I haven't read King and Black before, so if I'm off,
I'll allow it.
You should allow it because I haven't read it yet.
I'll allow it because Ryan Stegman continues to dodge my invites on Twitter. So I'm still gonna keep bugging you. Just don't block me or a restraining order or anything like that. We'll be fine.
So okay.
He's frozen. He's frozen.
He is frozen. I'll talk.
Hey. Yeah, he's frozen. Someone talk. Someone pick it up.
I haven't been reading all that much. I'm always perpetually behind and scrambling for time and trying to figure out when I can fit stuff in. I did manage to catch up on a lot of the Future State stuff, and I will echo what you said in that they put together some really sharp, smart teams to tell some really cool stories. I think of all of them, I mean, the next Batman by John Ridley and Mariko Tamaki and awesome. Dan Mora's Dark Detective. Matt Rosenberg is the perfect grifter writer. I hope he writes grifter for the rest of his life. Like,
yes,
just give me all your grifter, please. Thanks.
Yeah.
I can't say enough about how well he captures that character. That was so integral to like my younger years.
Yep.
Like that was right in the prime spot. 12, 13-year-old kid. Here's Cole Cash.
Yep.
You into it? Yeah. Yes, I am. I'm very into it. Please, sir, give me more. You got a solo? Yep. All right, let's do it. You got Ryan Benjamin online on board to continue drawing the character like all the classic days back in the day. Like it's a perfect storm. I'm a Wildstorm junkie from way back when. So I mean, anytime we get a little bit more Wildstorm, I'm happy. Like it makes me happy. There's, it's been a rough couple of years. There's not a whole lot that really makes me happy, but that really makes me happy. I mean, I had props to that.
Otherwise, kind of
mostly
like I feel like that's a cool thing about Future State is so much of it is working that I'm not really sure what's going to happen next, but I'm so excited for it because I know they're going to follow up on a lot of it. And there's probably going to be some new stuff coming out of it, but this feels like such an effective platform to kick off the next age for DC Comics.
Absolutely.
And that's the exciting thing is like, even for someone like me who doesn't read a lot of DC, never really read a lot of DC, but like now I've been like just every ounce of Future State. And now once Future State is done, I'm going to continue with these next titles just because I want to see what, where these teams are taking these characters and what's going to happen next. And the worst case scenario is I drop the book. So it's like, I mean, the ceiling is endless. I mean, but, I'm so intrigued now. And DC really found that niche to how do you keep the readers, they solved that riddle of how do you keep the readers interested once you stop what initially got them interested in. And it's marvelous. Brilliant.
Like, I feel like where DC's making this move with Future State, and then we're heading into Heroes Reborn again with Marvel, there's just such a stark difference.
Yeah.
And that's hard to look past. And I think that, there's still gems at Marvel. I mean, Daredevil's still just incredible right now. And you've got Immortal Hulk still happening. But as a publisher in these initiatives, DC's just got the advantage right now. And I'm reading way more DC than I am Marvel because it's very pick and choose. There's I don't know if it's kind of the shuffle that happened behind DC or if this is just the impacts of what was already set in stone and already happening. Because I know 5G kind of got derailed and stuff like that. But it seems like this future state is an example of DC. Excuse my language, but they've really got their shit together lately. And I'm excited for that because, I mean, you get online and people are excited about books that DC is putting out. It's not, them just kind of like trashing DC as a publishing line. There's so much, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, from the Superman 78 and Batman 89 stuff. You can go from things like that are digital first series that maybe people don't even read that many comics might check out because they're such fans of the movies, and hey, this is on your phone, to future state at the comic shop where you want to buy every title on the shelves because they're all good and they all have tapped into these creative teams that are worth picking up. And man, it's just smart from DC what they're doing. Like I see that direction that they're going in, and I just hope that it can sustain itself. I hope it'll last.
Well, and it's no surprise that Marie Jarvin, who is the new editor-in-chief over there, was previously on all their YAOGN books, right? Like all the young adult original graphic novels, the Ink, the Zoom, all of that. She was the editor over there and brought that energy where they're reaching out in communities. They're reaching out to web creators and digital creators and artists and poets and pulling them in, novelists, and pulling them in to say, hey, let's work on some comics together. And now that she's in charge, we're seeing more of that spread to the mainstream and the major titles, the big books. The writer of The Last God for Black Label is taking over Action Comics. Also, fellow soldier, musician, just how can you not love that kind of energy in a company? And then you look at some of the other publishers, you got the same 5 names and they're good. And a bunch of artists that they're fine. And
and I wanted to I'm so happy you brought up Philip Kennedy Johnson. Recently put out a tweet about the Superman World of War. I don't know if y'all have read it yet, but this just got me really excited for what Superman's about to be at DC Comics. He said, for readers curious about the inspiration behind the Edgar Waters character in Superman Worlds of War, he's based on several people, one of whom I know personally, but the most obvious and prominent inspiration was the late, great Medgar Evers, who voluntarily followed his brother into World War II, fought at Normandy, and returned home to become one of the architects of the civil rights movement in the U.S. He's about as Superman-like a figure as I can imagine, and a lifelong hero of mine. These are the types of inspirations that he's going to bring to this character into the series. And I feel like this is one that there was so much marketing and hype. Bendis is here, but I feel like this is going to be one that can really withstand the test of time, because it's these types of timeless inspirations that define the character and can help put them in a perspective that we can understand and relate to in our own real world. So I think it's just phenomenal, and we're getting a taste of that, as we can see now in Future State. I'm a fan of Philip Kennedy Johnson, if you can't tell.
He's great, and he's a great person. Much respect for him. And along those lines, I guess I want to send a shout out. About this time last year was when I started just really screaming from the rooftops, Stephanie Phillips is a thing of the future, rising star, pay attention. And I just took to Twitter a week or so ago and said Tim Sheridan is my new pick. That's my rising star for this year. If you haven't checked out his Future State Teen Titans and his Future State Shazam, both books were absolutely incredible. And when you consider, as far as I understand it, these are the only 4 comics he's written. Now, he has written lots of cartoons, tons of cartoons and cartoon, full feature-length films even. But for his first 4 comics, I mean, this is marvelous work. This is on-point timing and dialogue and just story structure, and also taking it into a brand new, exciting direction. So when he launches, he'll launch Teen Titans Academy on March 16th, and that'll be his first ongoing. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, March 18th we'll have him on the show.
Ooh.
Really?
So this
I
is
mean-
my pick. This is my horse for this year. I will be shouting from the rooftops all year long. Tim Sheridan is the real deal. I'm very excited.
And I should say that you, in particular, giving high praise to a writer on a Titans book is particularly meaningful because I know they're your babies.
I mean, it's pretty big news. Since we have Matt back here, welcome, Matt. Sorry you had internet tech issues.
Yeah, my internet or my Wi-Fi just decided to shit the bed, so that was fun.
We're talking about DC Future State, and I happened to see after one of our episodes, I was on Twitter, and we were talking about Future State, and freaking Aquaman was trending. And it wasn't because of the movie; it was because people were talking about Future State Aquaman. Why did people love it so much, Matt?
Because it's awesome. Like all of this. Well, okay, all of the things that Cody was just talking about with the execution in Future State Titans, right? Perfectly applies to Future State Aquaman. Now it focuses on the next generation. So you got Jackson Hyde as the inheritor of the title Aquaman, and then Andy, Arthur Curry's and Mara's daughter, who's 10-ish years old, and they've taken over the roles of protectors while ostensibly Arthur and Mara are tending to state affairs at Atlantis. And right away, Brandon Thomas just hits a perfect dynamic between them where Jackson Hyde is trying to fill shoes that are still too big for him, and at the same time mentor this kid that doesn't think she needs to be mentored, and not in an obnoxious way or anything like that, but she's just like, hey, my mom's Mara, what's up, dude? And just the interpersonal dynamics. I mean, there's really two characters in this entire comic, and the way they play off each other, the story beats, the way everything hits is just flawless. And there is noticeably not a new Aquaman book solicited yet in the next few months, which, okay, whatever. Aquaman and Cancellation are old friends, but I strongly suspect with the critical and fan reception to the Future State Aquaman book that might change. And if they're smart, they'll get Brandon Thomas to write it, because that is absolutely one of those books that just came out of nowhere for Future State, and just I didn't expect anything from this book.
Yeah.
Anything at all.
Like the Wonder Woman title, we kind of saw coming with Yara Flor. That one, that one was great.
We knew that was going to be good. We knew next Batman and Dark Detective were going to be good. There's some, but we knew that Superman versus Imperious Lex was going to be smart, fun, and subversive. There were certain gimmies in there, but there were some mystery titles like who the hell is Jeffrey Thorne and why is he writing Green Lantern? Who is this Tim Sheridan fellow? Etc. Etc. And I mean, Aquaman definitely fell into that, because while Excellence over at Image, written by Thomas, it has solid buzz, solid following. I don't believe anything in that book would have lent itself to, oh yeah, I think this guy should write Aquaman. So,
right? There's an eye for talent at DC right now. That's
there
just
truly
all over.
is.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I've been surprised about was I kind of figured when it was first announced and we started seeing how they were rolling everything out, I really thought that this was going to be closer to Convergence, where we would see these books announced. We'd get 2 issues, maybe 4 on like big titles, and then that was it. Like when we get out the other side, then we're back to Snyder and Bendis and Williamson and what have you. Like, and I really expected that. And now we're seeing all these announcements, like Steph on Harley and Ram on Swamp Thing.
Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Which I have thoughts on, but
Yeah, you have odd thoughts, or very different thoughts than I do.
Yeah.
so many.
Like, to me, where Aquaman was such a hit, I was so excited. I thought Swamp Thing was just going to be like immediate one of my favorite ones, and then it wasn't. You know, I was
I think it fits well in the more cerebral legacy of Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
And if you're not in that headspace or at least familiar with it, it might land a little flat for you.
Yeah. Yeah. There was just so much there that it needed more than 2 issues.
I can get behind that.
It just did.
But I was pretty happy. That was easily the best art I've ever seen from Mike Perkins, who's a little hit or miss for me.
Yeah.
He was full on hit with this, though. I mean, just the sheer amount of detail he was throwing in there was just incredible.
I like
it. And it really felt like a horror book.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt similar to the digital series that they did, which I believe were reprints of the Walmart stuff. When that hit, Mark Russell had a couple of stories in it that were pretty good.
That's right.
And he actually had a daughter in that digital series. And it was to kind of tie into the Sunderland Corp arc that was going on at the time. And I actually went back and read it after the Ram V Future State, because it's also dealing with Swamp Thing kind of creating his own people, but they're not the same people. They didn't tie in at all. It was just very similar things. And I think maybe that is also part of why it didn't land so hard, because there really wasn't much continuity there or anything like that, or even the same exploration of how it happened and the mechanics of it. Ram V went way more detailed with it, and it looked like kind of your biology textbooks in the explanations of how these people were created or beings. But it was so epic and so expansive, and then crammed into 2 issues. I felt like it just needed time to breathe.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, that was my biggest. So it was like a solid 8.5, but it could have been a 10, you know?
Yeah, but you're funny because you're the only person I know that'll riv something at 8.5 and be like, no, it's a bad review. Creators.
Yeah, because I love hyping things up, and it was good.
Let's all forget that all these future state promises, all these stories, they said right from the get-go, like, some of this will happen, some of them won't, some of this will look very similar but be different. Like, they've got an infinite amount of possibilities dependent on how we receive it, right? If Swamp Thing isn't landing as well with Swamp Thing fans as they expected, that direction will shift. No about it. Or the direction is already shifted beforehand, and it was just say, what if it ended up like this, but it's not, because it's going to end up like this.
I tell you what, I absolutely loved the Future State Justice League book.
All right.
I mean, Cody, I know you have mixed feelings on Williamson, but how did this book, just on its own merits, land with you?
It was fine. I think I read the first issue, not the second.
Okay.
I
loved it.
But
I felt like the character dynamics were really strong. I loved the Grant Morrison era callback that I absolutely didn't see coming. And it was just a nice balance of characters. I felt investment and just 2 issues. And I think that's, for me, has really been the surprise with a lot of these future state titles is, 2 issues, and I feel invested in these brand new characters, and I want more of them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the one that really landed home the most as far as stories I didn't expect to see was Green Lantern.
Yes.
And the central story for Green Lantern was meh, whatever. Like, I love Jon Stewart, but I thought it was nothing spectacular, nothing to write home about.
Yeah.
But that
it was fine.
Like Teen Lantern hanging out on Mogo. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes.
Teen Lantern's so cool. Who would have thought?
Right? Yeah, like all of those stories, even the Hal Jordan story, which by the time I got to it, I was like, well, I mean, come on, what are we doing here? But you get there, and it's this beautiful spoiler that I don't really want to ruin for anybody. But you get to the end of it, and you're like, oh, okay, all right, I'm listening, I'm on board. Let's goes. Like,
Well,
I
then,
thought,
you made a really good point in your review of one of the two issues. I forget which it was, though, where you said that making a Green Lantern book be God, I had a brain fart, but have very different stories for different characters
right.
and let that be the format. Because at this point, I mean, even discounting everyone's favorite alien Green Lanterns, there's so many Earthbound Green Lanterns that they need chances in the spotlight. You know, Simon Baz, Jessica, Kyle, they're all kind of in the background right now, and nobody's messing with them.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't see Kyle in either one of those issues.
No. The Guy Gardner story was great, though.
It was
In
so
issue
good.
1.
So good. Yeah.
I loved that story.
But I mean, yeah, if they don't take the hint and do an anthology Green Lantern series from here on out with like 3 stories per issue, one that's like half the book, and the other 2 that are, I don't know, 6-page backups.
Yeah.
Like they missed their entire point. Like they could absolutely sustain that for decades.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, please give me something, a Green Lantern that's not this Grant Morrison self-indulgent wank right now.
I like the Grant Morrison stuff, but I understand why people.
I am so over trying to fake it. I tried faking it a lot. It's more,
Big part of it
I
is
should love it, but I don't.
the work
So
that
hard.
turning in on that book is absolutely incredible. So, I mean, changing styles from issue.
It is.
The high detail, I mean, like periodic styles even. I mean, it's incredible work. So just visually, to me, the book is worth flipping through. But
Yeah.
I get it. I do get it. Like Morrison has definitely always been. You like it? I don't know.
This is one of the rare times with Morrison I just don't get it. I mean, he seems to be doing things to deliberately be that guy. I don't know, to be Grant Morrison-y, and it's just not landing with me. Like, where's the heart? Where's the love?
It's coming in Proctor Valley Road from Boom.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Well, guys, I'm getting word from behind me that my girls are hungry and the chef is indisposed. So I got to jump here and
All right.
go
Awesome.
cook them some food.
Well, Cody, thank you for hanging out. We're probably going to wrap it up here pretty quick.
Oh, definitely.
Always
It's already
good.
been over an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. Well, thanks again, and I'll see you guys when I see you.
See you, buddy.
Yeah,
Later.
man.
So okay, and then there were 3. So let's try to bring this to a head, and let's go old school, guys. What are you looking forward to that's coming out soon?
Ooh, it's hard because I feel like a lot of that is the news that we just covered. The Spawn universe, the Red
Okay,
Zone.
let me. I guess I'll put an asterisk on there. What's coming out that you're looking forward to that we haven't discussed at any point?
What's coming up? I'm gonna say Savage #2 because
This isn't
Savage
the Value
number
Watch
2.
show, but okay.
Yep. Yeah, this is not that. We're gonna get there, but the Savage Valiant has not put out a new #1 in a little bit. Savage #1 was awesome, and it left out on a cliffhanger for #2 that was very much a WTF moment. Like, what are we getting into? And I'm super hyped for that one.
Nope. Mike, how about you, buddy? What are you looking forward to that we haven't talked about?
Oh, I guess probably the next issue of TMNT, which is going to be pretty cool because right now they got a like a time travel thing going on, and some stuff has happened to kind of, they got to save shit now in order to not get the timeline all crazy and junked up towards their future and stuff. So it's a pretty good story. So it's really good story actually right now. But yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Okay. And I mean, Sophie Campbell's just absolutely amazing on that book, and friend of the show. We'd love to have her back at some point, Mike. And as for me, what am I looking forward to? Well, first and foremost, I'm looking forward to actually being able to get my comics this week because Snowpocalypse, mine are still stuck in Tennessee waiting to ship to Oklahoma. So weak.
Weak indeed.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I could name just about every Future State book that came out this week is what I'm looking forward to reading. But we didn't give Marvel a lot of love in this episode. And so I'm just going to say that I am looking most forward in April to The Marvels from Kurt Busiek. And it's basically going to be Astro City in the Marvel Universe at any point in time in its history. And Alex Ross is going to be doing the covers. I mean, my God, how can I not be hyped for this thing? It just like that just right there hits every one of my buttons. So, yeah.
Just another cool comic. I mean, we spent the last hour basically talking about all this cool stuff that's either out right now or coming out very soon. And we could probably go an hour more talking about stuff. I mean, there's so much happening right now. It's really crazy. There's a few like image books that we didn't talk about. There's just a lot happening right now and a lot to be excited about to dig in and support your local comic shop and read some comics.
Yeah, absolutely. Next week, hopefully we're back on track with our guest interview schedule. I think we'll play it by ear and barring Mother Nature's wrath again.
Next week is Louis Southard with Midnight Western Theater at Scout.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yes. And then we've got Dave Sharp coming up the following week on the 4th.
Okay, so there it is. Man, we went a whole episode and didn't talk about WandaVision either. Like, that could have been a whole episode in and of itself.
We got a whole episode on WandaVision coming up. We got to do that.
Oh, we certainly, it's going to happen.
So maybe the week after Dave Sharp.
Yeah.
Hey.
Good idea.
Things
we got 3 episodes left, I think. So it's right along that time.
Yeah.
So, okay. With that in mind, thank you all for listening, all 3 of you. And, support your local comics shop. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Frankie's Comics, Lemon Juice Comics, and
Carson's Corner.
For helping out and supporting us. I didn't have the list, okay? I don't really have it written down. And you all be safe out there. Support the local comic store. Be good to each other. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.